All right, friends, I am so excited for who we have back on the show. I am sitting here with my real life friend, Liz Bohannon. Liz, welcome to the show again.
I am so excited. I actually don't remember anything. I don't remember what we talked about last time, actually. You know how it is. You kind of get like podcast blur a little bit. But I for sure remember the emotion, which was I could have kept going in conversation with her for like 4 more hours. When are we going to meet in real life? And we should probably do more of this. So I'm really happy you clearly felt mutually and are having me back now.
It was so mutual. I'm like, well, this is happening. This is we're doing this. Okay, I have 1,000 things to talk about. Tell us, for women who haven't met you yet, we will link to our previous interview because it was so good. Tell us who you are, what you do, and a fun fact.
Okay, so my name is Liz Forkin Bohannon. I live in Portland, Oregon with my husband, Ben, and my 3 boys, 8, 6, and 3. And I live in a really intentional community, which I think we're going to talk about. I'm a social entrepreneur by day, so a venture builder. I love business, but I love business specifically that's solving a social problem and making the world a better place. And then I'm also a podcaster, an author, a content creator, all the things.
Okay, well, so we talked about this a little bit last time we chatted about your living situation, for lack of a better umbrella term.
Yeah.
And it was so inspiring to me. I feel like one of the things I love the most about the podcast and just getting to talk to women in general is that people will drop something about their lives or something they're into or something they've been doing, and it sparks an idea in us. Like they're kind of contagious, and you go, wait, I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what you did for us last time we talked.
I love that you just said that because I just deeply believe that one of the roles that we get to play for each other in community is just expanding one another's imaginations. I feel like I will get, of the 10 million ideas that can be had in a day, I'll get 1 or 2. But I can't get all of the ideas. And my imagination on my own, if I was just alone in a room, I just wouldn't go to certain places. But I think it is such a great gift when someone gets another idea for whatever reason, their lived experiences, their interests, their natural proclivities. And you're just exactly what you just said, I didn't know that was an option. I didn't know that was available to me. It's not that people can't. I believe that what I am doing it's actually not rocket science, and everybody has the capacity and the ability. Not everybody, we can take anything to the extremes, but it's more about just knowing this is available to you. It's not easy, but it's an option. And I think as I'm growing increasingly passionate about talking about it. And it's exactly for that. Of just I'm not trying to force my way on anybody, but I do believe that I want to know people. Here's the menu of available options. This is one of them. It can be done. And I think oftentimes we just have to see somebody doing something before we really believe that it's possible. And so I'm so happy that you said that. That is my whole entire heart in sharing more about the way that I'm living.
Oh, it's so cool. Well, okay, listen, I'm going to back us up because I need a fun fact from you, just because I know.
I forgot the fun fact.
I feel like you are a treasure trove of fun facts. I feel like I know that this is true, that you're the kind of person that's this one time, and then there are 15 stories that are just interesting or hilarious or you're kidding me. So not to really put you on the spot, but
when I think fun fact, actually where my head goes a little bit more is, which I don't know if this is what you're going for, is stupid human tricks. I have really weird feet, which is kind of ironic because I built a sandal company and I was like, oh my gosh, my feet are my least favorite feature of my whole body. And of course, when I was a broke early entrepreneur, you just, you can't hire and you're kind of have to.
You are the foot
and I'm
model.
Constantly drawing people's attention to my feet. I have this wild gap between my big toe and my second toe. I look like a primate. I look less human and more like a monkey, but I can do I can pick stuff up with, it's very natural. If I'm barefoot around my house, I'm just constantly picking things up with my feet, putting them in a toy bin.
This is so fantastic. This is everything I was hoping for. Okay. So
I'd
now that
show you,
everyone's
but then
friends,
stuff could get weird and we might need to put this behind a paywall and, so I'll just let your imagination. I'll just let your imagination
there might
go.
be a clientele that we wouldn't necessarily
I don't think
invite to girls'
that's
night.
the demographic we're going for here. Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not. Sorry, people. We are not your people. Okay. So tell us, now that we've sort of teed it up a little bit, tell us about your living situation. Like, where do you live? How do you live? Who lives by you?
Yeah.
Give us the rundown.
Yeah. So I'll fast forward to, like current day. If you were to just parachute into my life, what you would find is I live in a city. So I live in like an urban neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. And I actually share property. So you would see 4 houses in a row, and then one house behind us. So I share property and live literally next door to my best friends. And then there's a couple other like pods of homes of other best friends that live all within what we are like walking distance or even baby monitor distance. That was really the goal. That's what we called it when we were in the design phase. And we are a group of friends. We are we're not an organization. We're not like a nonprofit. We're not like affiliated with any larger organization. We are just a group of now best friends. We weren't always best friends, who are living really intentionally in proximate community, but even beyond just the proximity and physical aspect of just trying to intentionally go, how do we do community well and engage one another and set up just like rhythms and cultural expectations so that we are building what I would now call a dense network of support. So people who just show up for each other on so many different levels, like just emotional and relational, but then also on the most kind of practical, tactical. It's 10 o'clock at night and the pharmacy is closed. Does anybody have leftover amoxicillin so I can get started on this before I can get my kid to the doctor tomorrow morning? I don't actually advocate sharing antibiotics specifically. Maybe I should have said Tylenol. But the point being, people who show up for one another on kind of like every level of that spectrum. Yeah.
How did you go back to the beginning now? How did this come about? Because like we, speaking for me and everyone listening, like we have 1,000 questions. So let's go back to the beginning. How did this happen?
So, we all have, there's probably close to 20, probably 17 people in our community at this point. And we all have our different stories. So I will say I'm only telling my story of how I got here. We are actually entering into the final stages. We think our last family who's having a baby, she is having a baby this week. So it's kind of a big deal for our community because we're like really kind of collectively closing the chapter on the baby stage. So I have really big feelings about that. But so my story really starts, as all of our stories start when we're kids, I guess, and like growing up. My experience with community and connection is that I had none. And I should say I was born into a world that felt very isolated, but in a super classic normative American way. Not like I was born into a dungeon and like didn't see the light of day, but like middle-class family, lived in like a new suburb where nobody knew their neighbors. I went to a school that was like pretty far away from where I lived. So all of my friends were probably like a 30-minute drive. My parents didn't really have friends. Like I didn't really understand what the concept of kind of like family friends were. It was just like a very like, we're our nuclear family. We didn't live around extended family. It was just like the 5 of us in our like, new-ish house in like suburbia America. And we got in the car and we drove everywhere. That kind of like normal. That was just like what I thought was normal. And then some really hard things started happening in my family, or at least I became aware of them in probably like middle school and high school. And that's where I would say I first experienced the like normative of like, not only are you just far away from everyone physically, we keep ourselves very far away from people when it comes to sharing hard things. And the message that I got, not explicitly, but pretty implicitly, was like, your role in this family, our family duty, is just to make sure nobody knows what's going on behind the scenes. And the message was, what people think about our family is actually much more important than what is actually happening in our family. And so then that kind of created this sense of just like deeper loneliness of just like, not only am I physically and like proximately kind of alone, I'm alone. Like no one else's family is going through something like this. No one else can know. This is so embarrassing. It's so shameful. I just have to like keep showing up and making sure everybody thinks everything is fine. And so that was, but when you're a kid, you don't know any different. Before you've been exposed, it was exactly what kind of going back to the beginning of this conversation. It's like you don't have an imagination for something different because your norm is your norm. And it wasn't until I went to college. I remember like literally 2 nights into being in college, I was in a very new friend's dorm room. And they were just like very freely talking about their families and specifically their parents and their parents' relationship and divorce, which my parents were in the midst of getting a divorce, and it was like very salacious and dramatic. We don't have to get into the details, but it was not something that I thought anybody else had experienced. And they were just talking so freely about it. Where I was like, wait, what? You can just like say that out loud? Like I was just shook of just like, it wasn't even like dramatic or like a reveal. It was just like, like these are the facts of my life. And so I feel like, boom, like imagination a little bit cracked open for me of going like, I don't want to live the way that I've been living. Like I want to live like that. I want to be able to talk about the reality of my life without feeling a sense of shame or, hiding. And then that kind of led me to the social experiment in college where I really wanted to invest in relationships and invest specifically in female friendships. And so I ended up moving into a house of 6 girls and just started thinking, if we had a vision for being friends beyond college when everything is made so easy for you to be friends, right? Well, why is it made so easy to be friends in college? There's proximity. Number one, there's proximity. You are living with your friends or by your friends. You are within walking distance from your friends. You're not planning, you don't have to plan 30 days in advance to see your friends in college. You're regularly sharing meals together. You're having this shared experience of being at the same school and going to the same football games and knowing the same people. And so there was this sense that it was like, it's easy to be friends now. What could we start doing today that I feel like would really build not just superficial, like you're here in front of me friendships, but like friendships, like for the long haul. And so I started instituting like a couple of practices into our girlfriend group. The main one that I would say, 20 years later, I am still so committed to and has now played out in my adult life is around commitment and consistency. So I have 4 pillars for how you build the types of dense networks of support that I'm talking about. The first one is initiation. So initiation meaning in America, very few of us are going to be born into a village. That's just not the experience of the average American. So Americans have the unique task at hand that if you believe it takes a village, you actually have to be the one that makes the village. I don't think people get lucky and stumble upon community. And actually, that's even not like community is actually just a bunch of people who feel connected to each other, 2 or 3 or more people that feel connected. And no one can actually do that for you. Like the nature of connection is like, if you're not the one taking the action to connect, you can't benefit from connection. So it's very unlike other things in American culture, pretty much a lot of American culture that can be consumed. So the first thing is that we have to move from a mentality of consuming community. Like I'm just going to find it. I'm going to wait. I'm going to join the right group and then they're going to create it for me. And it's their job to help me feel connected and move to a mentality of creator. Like I'm a creator of community. If I want it, I have to go out and build it. The second, which is why I got into this, is consistency and commitment. Consistency and commitment. And the number one thing that Americans get wrong with consistency and commitment is that we wait until we feel a sense of trust and connection to people before we're willing to commit to them consistently. So it's like, well, yeah, obviously, if I had a best friend who I loved and I trusted and we had inside jokes, like, of course I would do a weekly night out with her. That would be so fun. But like, I'm going to wait until it's clear that that's the right person before I would give such a big, part of my life or time to somebody. But the problem with that thinking is it's backwards, is that actually trust and connection is an outcome of consistency and commitment. trust and connection are not a prerequisite to consistency and commitment. So you have to start with consistency and commitment if you want to have a chance. And here's the thing, there's gonna be wrong turns. And I'm not saying it's like a 100% if you invest and you commit and you're consistent, it will definitely result in these relationships. But I am saying fat chance that you get those relationships without it being preceded by commitment and consistency. So as early as college, I started instituting, it was a Monday night roommate meeting. It was a house meeting. And it was at 10 o'clock on Monday night, which goes to show you that's what happens when you're in college and you do.
I was going to say that we would go with like a cool 6:30 now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Do not come knocking on my door at 10 o'clock unless it is an emergency. So at 10 p.m., we would sit in a circle. And really the purpose of this meeting was kind of twofold. One, it was to just intentionally share about our lives, to like ask each other the good questions that you're not going to ask in passing or when you have a class that starts in 20 minutes. It was just kind of like creating space so that we could know one another and then we would pray for each other. And the second stated goal of this time was, hey, hard stuff is going to happen. Like we're a house of 6 girls. Like we share toilet paper and living spaces and refrigerator space. And so stuff is going to come up where we start to misunderstand each other or there's like resentment that starts to build. And let's just have a standing place once a week that we can expect that those things are going to come up and we can talk about them honestly and openly and hear each other, understand each other, and work through it. And that was the beginning. And I saw just as like a little tadpole in college that I was like, it was transformative. It was transformative. And I will say, spoiler alert, again, no guarantees. It's like life is hard and stuff happens. But my lived experience, those 6 women are still my like covenant best friends. Text every day, hours of Marco Polos a week. We have an annual get together that is like unmissable, non-negotiable. These women have become a core part of my kind of sphere of relational health. Now, it's not proximate. We all live all over the country at this point, and we really haven't been proximate friends since college. But the 2 to 3 years that we spent in building that foundation has really been the thing that I feel like has carried us through so many iterations of life and adulthood and marriage and kids and loss and, all of the things that we all experience as humans. So that kind of got me noodling. And then I'm going to I feel like I'm talking really fast because I could talk for hours about this. So then I move from America to Uganda. Maybe I talked about that on our earlier podcast. That's kind of where my company and my entrepreneurial journey began. But this other thing that was happening to me in Uganda this is the first time I've ever lived out of the United States or the Midwest America. So that was moment number 2 for me of like imagination cracked wide open. So in college, my imagination was like, wow, you're allowed to tell your friends the truth about your life. And started experimenting with that. Imagination cracked open moment number 2 was moving to Africa and going, whoa, there are people that live like this, not just in like small group relationships, but on a macro level. This entire culture is connected and interdependent, and people ask each other for help, and they live in proximity, and they're not in college. Like moms and babies are doing life together, and people are going to the market together, and people are asking their neighbors for salt when they run out of it. And so I was like, all of a sudden was like, in my little world in America, no, that's like this idyllic four years that you get in college, and then you have to go into the big, cold, lonely world. And my experience in Uganda was going, no, you don't. No, you don't. There are other adults in the world who aren't buying into that. So then chapter 2 was me coming back home to the US and going, what if I built it? Like, what if I just oriented and prioritized my very normal American existence, but did it with the hopes of building something that feels a lot more like living in community or living in a village in Uganda than it does living like a typical American life. And so started that journey. I'll pause here because I realize I just got us to chapter 1 of building the commune in Portland, but I've been talking for a long time. So I feel like I should pause.
Let you get a drink. Liz, this is so fantastic. And I said this as we were like hitting record, that this is something that's really fresh on my mind right now. One thing I was thinking about is when you're deciding where you're going to go to college, if that's like part of your story, I feel like the piece of advice that everybody gives is like, you don't go to college for a boyfriend. Like you don't make the decision based on a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously some people do, and it works out in various ways. But I feel like that's one of those things we say is like, no, you cannot make this decision based on a boyfriend or even like your best friends. You can't go to that college just because your best friend's going there. And I feel like I do a lot of things because of my best friends. But that kind of advice has sort of stuck in my brain.
Yeah.
That like, well, you can't pick a neighborhood because of your best friends. You can't pick a state to live in because of your best friends. You can't XYZ. And I mean, there is something true about that. Like for a while, as you know, we were living in Nashville and we were deciding, you know, do we move back to Denver at any point? Because that's where a lot of my closest people are. And we're like, well, they might move. Like we were kind of in the stage where who knows where we're all going to end up.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the case anymore. And so that like you can't pick a college based on your boyfriend advice has like sort of been lodged in my brain.
You're exactly right. And I have experienced it's so the number one reason that an American would move across a city or state lines, I'll have you guess just for the sake of it. What do you think the number one reason is people in America move?
A job.
Yes. So it's a job. Lots of people relocate for jobs. And like the financial experts would say, if you can get a raise that is 10 to 20% of what your current salary is, you should move for the job. Like that's just like, so we're all just like, yeah, that's like, if you met someone and like, well, I'm moving my family, we're going here. Why are you doing it? For a job. Oh, okay. I'm same job, gonna love it, also gonna get paid more. The response would be like, good for you, man. Great. Mm-hmm. If you were to tell somebody that I'm picking up my life and I'm moving to go be with my friends, I am telling you, my lived experience is that people think that that is radical, it's idealistic, it's bizarre, it's a little bit extreme. But what the data actually shows us is that people who see their friends 3 times a week or more, so have designed a life, which I believe that in order to achieve that, most of us need some level of proximity, report a life satisfaction increase that is equivalent to a $150,000 a year raise. So just like, how are you in life is the same as somebody who experienced a $150,000 a year raise. Harvard Med School also released the results of the longest ever study on human wellness and longevity and found that the single greatest predictor of all of the factors that you could imagine that can be measured, the single greatest predictor of how long you will live, how physically healthy you will be at the end of your life, and your just self-reporting of how happy and fulfilled you are, the number one predictor is the quality of your warm relationships. And that is not just your family. It actually specifically includes your friendships. So when people look at me like I am some sort of like idealistic, like, woohoo, like love, peace, and harmony. And I'm like, bro, no, it's just data. Like, look at the data. Like the data shows us that this is the single most important investment that we could make in our physical and mental health. That goes for our children as well. Like, I'm not a cuckoo, yahoo, woo-woo for like doing this. I actually think I'm just like a pretty data-driven person who's going, if this is what the science says is one of the best investments I can make, like, yeah, I'll move across the country. I'll give up money. I'll prioritize it like I prioritize other good things in my life. But the notion of friendship that we have in America is it's just bizarre. And I say bizarre like less to be disparaging because I am an American and I love America in so many ways. I mean bizarre as in like, no. If you look at the rest of the world, we are an absolute outlier with how we value non-nuclear family relationships. It's also interesting to me that it's like, yeah, same to move to go be with a potential spouse, very accepted.
Yes.
To move for a job, very accepted. To move to your friends, people will think you're a nut job. But I am on a mission to change that. I'm on a mission to make that a much more normative reason and thing to orient your life around.
I really like, I love this. I love this so much. We are living in Spain, as you know, and we're living down the street. I mean, a 9-minute walk Exactly. A 9-minute walk away from my best friend. And I have not gotten to spend this much time with her since we studied abroad in Spain our junior year of college. And that year or that semester was so transformative for me. And I think one of the reasons is because I had such good friendship and I was seeing those friends so often. And I just like that $150,000 thing, I'm like, oh yeah, I can
It's real.
totally like I can vouch for that. Getting
Yeah.
to see my best friend so often is so life-changing. And also it like, as I'm just thinking about what does life look like in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? I mean, the short answer is I have absolutely no idea. But I do know that the pattern of like needing to like only seeing my closest friends because we scheduled something like 30 days out, like I hate that. I don't want to do that. And so I don't know very much, but I do know that I'm tired of living that way and that's the way I've been living for a long time. I
Yeah.
don't want to schedule things 30 days out. I want to say, what are we doing this weekend?
Yep. And what you experienced of just like what I heard you say was life felt so rich during that season. What I didn't hear you say was like nothing went wrong or it was all so easy. And that is because friendships and secure relationships, they bolster us from life's challenges. And it's not that life becomes easy when you have good community. It's that you have the resiliency and the support that you need to do that. There was this amazing study that was done where they asked people to like look at, it was like a mountain or a hill or steps or something, and basically estimate like how tall do you think that staircase is? How big do you think that mountain is? And how long do you think it would take you to climb it? And they had people standing at the base of it alone, and people would give their estimates of how big they thought and how long it would take to scale that mountain. And then they had somebody that they trusted, a friend, stand next to them. And then they asked them the same question. And the results came back and showed that people who were just literally standing next to a friend reported that the mountain was so much smaller than the people who were standing alone at the base of the mountain. And I think that that's just such a beautiful picture of like, I'm not selling you snake oil, telling you that your life is going to be easy and magical and that hard things aren't going to happen if you prioritize friendship and community. What I'm telling you is that that will create the resiliency and support that you need to withstand the challenges that life will inevitably give. And I think that that is the difference. One of the things that I feel like I've become really passionate about this concept of like, there's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is the hard things that happen in life that no one can keep from happening. It's just like loss and grief and so many sicknesses and job loss and mental health, so many things that can give us pain in life. Suffering is actually the story that we attach to our pain. So pain is, pain is I lost my job. Suffering is I lost my job because I'm incompetent and everybody thinks I'm incompetent and I'm never going to find another job. So I'm going to be in this place for forever. And the last 5 years that I spent working towards this opportunity was a complete waste and I'm an idiot and I should have made different decisions in the past. That's suffering, that kind of mental loop that we get in. There was like the hard thing that happened to you, you got fired. Then there's all of these stories that you attach to your pain. And that is what actually creates suffering. And I think what friendship and community does, it can't keep us from pain, but it actually can insulate us from suffering. Like when we let other people into the stories we're telling ourselves about our pain, and we're able to kind of hear from their perspective, and we're not, and also when we remember we're not alone in our pain. That's the biggest story that leads to suffering is I'm all alone in my pain. And the moment you bring somebody into your pain story, you are insulating yourself from suffering because you no longer feel like you're alone in your pain. And so I think your experience of living with your best friend and going like life felt so rich and so doable. It's not because it was perfect and it wasn't because hard things didn't happen. It was because you had a buddy to like be in it with you and to help insulate you from loneliness and from suffering.
I love it so much. Okay, so I want to know, how did you so you have this second aha moment in Uganda and you're like, hey, everyone in the rest of the world like lives in community and intergenerationally, and like in other parts of the world, you're not living on a little mini island. How did you gather these people? Like, how did you choose people? Did you Did they choose you?
Yeah,
Did you
totally.
what did that look like?
Yes, I will give you, I'm just going to walk you through it because I could try to like talk about platitudes, but I think we learn best through like actual examples. So I'm just going to literally tell you, this is my story. We moved. So when I moved home from Uganda, I launched this company. About a year later, my husband, Ben, quit his day job to join the company full time. So we were like complete floaters. We didn't have jobs. I mean, we did, but we were self-employed and not getting paid anything. We didn't have roots anywhere, and we were kind of completely untethered, and really had this moment where we were like, where do we want to build our company? Or honestly, if I'm being really honest, we were in our mid-20s and we were like, where would be a fun adventure? Like, let's go live let's choose a city that we really like. And we fell in love with the Northwest. The problem with the Northwest is like, we didn't have any friends here. We're from like Missouri. So we show up in Portland and we're losers in the sense that it's just like, we don't have friends. Like, it's just the two of us. And I say losers not in like a disparaging way of just like, but we didn't have any friends, and we just had the two of us. Now, luckily, I will say I could reverse and say what isn't integral but was very helpful is that I married somebody who had similar interest and passion and belief in the value of friendships and community. So I at least don't feel like I was swimming upstream by any means. I at least felt like I had a buddy who wanted to also find more buddies, and that is really helpful, versus like a husband who was kind of like, well, it's fine. It's just the two of us. We can hang out every Friday night. Which is frankly what a lot of men do feel, because they are very used to the women in their lives doing the vast majority of emotional and relationship building labor for them. And they do kind of outsource that to their wives. And it's why I think it's the primary reason why men are actually a lot more unhealthy relationally than women. So first step is married somebody who like also wanted to build community and have friends. And this is the point in the story where I will say, I think people get it wrong where they like move to a new city and they're like, well, find the people who have great community and like go try to be friends with them. And then you'll like get introduced to all of their friends. And that might work for some people. My new slogan is look for the losers. Like, look for the losers. Like, look for the people that also don't have community and connection. I think so many people kind of spend their community building effort, like looking in, that scene in Hook where like the family's like eating dinner and Hook's like looking in the window at the family around the table. And like, I think a lot of us unconsciously do this when we're trying to build community. We look at people that already have it and we're like, I just need to get into that. They already have it. So I just need to bang hard enough or get a seat at the table. And I'm not saying that that doesn't always work or that you shouldn't be open to that. But the reality is, statistically speaking, you are surrounded by people who are longing for community and connection and don't have it. So I just feel like it's a better use of our time and energy to find people that don't have it but want it and to build it with them versus competing for somebody's time and energy that's like really, really relationally full and kind of at capacity. And it's not because they're a jerk and it's not because they're excluding you. That is I'm going to say something that's going to sound mean, but it's true. So give me the benefit of the doubt. That way of thinking of like, they're leaving me out, they're being exclusive is borderline narcissistic. Like, sweet girl, like to think that she is living her life just purposely. And listen, you might be around a mean girl who really does have it out for you, but the way more likely story is she's at capacity. And all of us have capacity. And the social scientists actually we know how many acquaintances in relationships we can tend to, how many kind of like friends we can have, and how many intimate relationships that we can tend to, and that we just max out at that capacity. It's probably not about you. She's probably not doing it on purpose. She's probably actually just full. Meanwhile, there are 30 people around you that are desperately longing and want what you have. So like, go find them. Losers look for losers. And that's what I did. That's why I can say it so freely. Like, I didn't have friends. My husband didn't have friends. And we set out and we were I think people love to be nonchalant. Like, we're fine. We're good. Like, we could take friends, and both my husband and I were like very chalant about things. We were just like, we don't have friends and we would like some. Like, we're interested in having friends. Who do you know that might also need some friends? Like, we want to have our people. And sure enough, kind of friends of friends, we were at like a happy hour that, by the way, nobody wants to go to those things. Like you think you're special because you don't want to show up at some stupid happy hour network mingling thing? No, girl. News alert. None of us want to go to those. None of us want to go to those. But one of my principles of building community is that we should never, ever make our decisions about how we want to spend our time and our energy thinking about how we feel before we do something. We should only judge after we do the thing. Because most things that are good for us, we don't want to do beforehand. But we were like, if we want friends, we have to work for friends. So we showed up at something where, there's a 99% chance, like all the other ones, you just kind of mill about and have small talk. And we ended up meeting a couple who had just moved here from Nashville, Tennessee. And honest to God, and I say this with so much affection because if you knew the level of friendship and affection that I have for these two humans in my life who I've literally built a life with, my first impressions were like, they're not for us. I was just kind of like, thank you for introducing us. Also, she's just not really my type, I don't think. And we laughed so hard about that. But here was the one thing about them that I was like, well, we at least have to give it a go. And the one thing that they had in common with us is that they were also losers, like that they also didn't have friends. And so I was like, all right, well, I would be a dum-dum not to, try it out. What do we have to lose? And that was really the beginning. It was just the four of us. So we did not start with some sort of big community initiative or I think oftentimes, people see our community of however many people. Clearly, I don't even know how many actual humans are in it. Probably in the 30s, 17 adults, and think, I don't know 17 people that I could live in that close of proximity and connection with. And you're like, yeah, girl, slow down. Do you know one? Or do you not even know one, but start with the one? It always, and that's the thing about community that I have found in my work building and architecting and learning about communities is the vast majority of the time, at least in America, where we're not born into a village, villages start with two people. A village starts with two people connecting and committing to one another and kind of setting the table and putting their flag in the sand. You don't wait for consensus to build community. You build relationship and you commit. And so that's what we did with the four of us. We were like, okay, I guess we're going to be friends because we literally don't have any other options. But now how do we be intentional friends? And we pre-feeling connection and trust, we decided, kind of took a page out of my college book. I was like, well, this is all I really know how to do. I think we should start meeting weekly. And we picked a bar. Separate, actually. It was me and Miriam, and then her husband's name is Chris, and my husband's name is Ben. And kind of said, okay, Wednesday nights are for the girls and for the guys. It was pre-kids at this time. We still meet on Wednesday nights, by the way. And we have lots of kids, but we're going to go every Wednesday night, and it's high commitment. It's like, yes, if you're in the hospital or you're hosting family that you never see, that's fine. But generally speaking, we commit. If you are in town, you show up to it. And we put this kind of high commitment, high consistency thing ahead of the trust and the connection that we actually had, with the hope that that's actually what was going to build it. And then we really also made sure to cultivate the conversation on that night. It wasn't just a night to drink beer and talk about other people. It was a night to ask one another questions, share our stories, and really know each other. And sure enough, we consistently met for a long time. And it was a while before other people started joining. But once you've put your flag in the sand, now all of a sudden you're not. So then somebody else comes along. We're like, hey, we're doing this thing. We do it on Wednesday nights. And I think Miriam and I both knew that we had a vision for it not just being the two of us, that we eventually wanted more people at the table. But again, instead of waiting for consensus before you start with one other person. And then you kind of put your flag in the ground. And so then when other people would come around that were like, oh, you're also looking for community and we have some things in common. We have this thing that we could invite you to. It's not like a pop in and pop out thing. It is kind of it's a high consistency, high commitment thing. Frankly, we don't really want you to come unless you can commit to coming. And I will say for years, people came and then they were like, and they left us. They would come and they would go. So again, this was not a linear, perfect journey of we picked a table and then people came and every person that came stayed with us. There were people that were like, this isn't my jam, or that is too high of a commitment and I don't want to give it. And so it took many, many years for the table to become the consistent table that it is today. And I would say the table has been consistent for what feels like many years now, several years, but it took more years than that to kind of build the consistent table. So that was the real foundation of the relationships, was we commit to each other. We tell the whole truth about our lives. We are vulnerable. We ask one another for help. We show up when we say we're going to show up. And then, we were partnered and coupled, and people were single and dating at the time. So then, in addition to that weekly girls and guys gathering, we started doing the same with the whole group. I think we did maybe twice a month. We would get together on Sunday nights. And for like whiskey nights, we would go over to somebody's house. But again, it wasn't like, let's just mill about and like watch YouTube videos. There was intention around it of like, okay, all of us are in the same space. Let's cultivate conversation about knowing one another and really, just like building the level of trust and intimacy that comes from like intentional conversation. There was lots of playtime as well. Like we all lived kind of in the same neighborhood. And so we hung out all the time, but we really did put an emphasis on these specific nights of the week or month for like intentional relationship building. And it really was through that process. There was a group of probably about only 3 or 4 couples that by this point were a part of it, that we started thinking about proximity and like our physical location as this really important part of maintaining friendship, and specifically maintaining friendship once we had kids. I think that was something that was on the horizon for all of us, is like we all wanted to build families, and we all knew that all the work that we had done to cultivate these friendships and community would kind of go out the window if the moment we had babies, we're like, well, we're moving to this area of town because we can get a bigger, better house, or we want to be in this school district. And so we felt really committed to like, if we want this goal, like we called it the golden years. Like we're just like, we're just like single or coupled, but no kids. And we're riding our bikes to each other's houses, really similar to your vibe of like being with your best friend in Spain. And it was like, it doesn't have to stop being this good. We're going to have to put another level of work into it, but let's invest ahead of time so that when that season does come, like we're set up to continue the way of life that we've really built. And so it started with us moving in next door to the Chesbros. They were that original couple. The apartment next door to them opened up. At this point, we were only like 6 blocks away from them. So it was a completely irrational move in the sense that it was like, you're already 6 blocks away. That apartment's more expensive and crappier. It doesn't make sense on all the like reasons that you should move. None of them were there. The only thing that it had was that it was next door to our best friends. And so we were like, all right, we're moving 6 blocks and we're paying more in rent and we're getting an apartment that we don't like as much, but we're doing it to be next door to them. And I think for both of us, that experience of even just the 2 of us living literally next door, we were like, this is even different than 6 blocks. Like now, all of a sudden, I'll never forget my first weekend in that apartment. I was out back, like DIYing something at like 7:00 in the morning. Welcome to being married or friends with me. And I'm like sanding something in the backyard. And it was really cold. And my hands were like so cold, but I was like so determined. And Chris, my now neighbor, saw me through his like kitchen window, and he had been making his little French press that morning. And he just came out and he just like handed me a warm cup of coffee and then went back out and went back inside. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's different. Like that moment doesn't happen unless I'm literally in your backyard. And is that like a magnificent, huge, life-turning moment? No. But the reality is it's like that actually is what proximate life does, is it's a million little moments that are not extraordinary that actually build an extraordinary sense of connection and safety and belonging. So I think for both of us, we were like, okay, our next move to a more permanent place outside, once we think about like buying, like we need to be able to have these sort of unplanned moments. And then the other couple people that were involved in the group conversation at this point, were like, okay, yeah, we're in. So here's what I will say. So then we kind of have this core group of people that are like, we're interested in designing this next season of life intentionally to index on community and friendship. And we got people around a table. Actually, at this point, I want to say it was probably closer to like maybe 12 people. Because here's the thing. When you're like, who wants to live next to your friends? Actually, a lot of people will raise their hand and be like, that sounds really fun and cool. So we sat around the table. One, we were talking about kind of what are the principles of life that we did recognize that in order to live that closely with people, there has to be some values alignment. So I am not advocating that you like go to the Whole Foods and pick 5 people randomly and then buy property with them. Okay, let me be very clear that I do think before you make that move, there is a lot of intentionality that needs to go into why are we doing this? What are the non-negotiables of this community? What do we care about? What can we agree on? Because that kind of becomes your like guiding star and the thing that if everybody kind of had a say in it, you can kind of mutually call back to. And that's really, really important, I think, to have a lot of those conversations up front. So there was a lot of people that even from an idealistic standpoint, we're like, yeah, I'm a big fan. And we're all followers of Jesus. So for us, there is a faith component and how our faith manifests really drove a lot of our values. So our values are hospitality, generosity, sharing, justice, and prayer. Those became kind of the 5 things that we said, we want our community to be marked by these things. Well, there was a kind of big-ish group of people that were like, yeah, I can get behind all of that. Like, I want to be generous. I'm into sharing. I, care about justice. But then the logistics part came in. So we're like, okay, we got a Google sheet out, made a Google sheet, and basically every family, we had so many different factors that people think about when they think about where they're going to buy a house, right? Cost of living and school districts, proximity to your work, proximity to the airport. Is it walkable? Is it whatever. So we like listed out like every preference that you could possibly have and like what area of the city people wanted to live in. And then every family got to kind of like rank their choice of like what was most important and what we thought was going to happen. And in hindsight, I am so grateful because it just changed the whole spirit of the experiment from like, I'll fit you in if I get my needs met first to the most important thing is being together. And any kind of hard or crappy thing won't be that hard or crappy if we're doing it together. And spoiler alert, we ended up moving to a neighborhood with terrible schools, with a lot of used car dealerships and ugly homes. Okay, so this is where the like utopia moment of like, no, I'm not living in utopia in the sense that it's like, I didn't want any of those things. But I was willing to sacrifice all of those things to live next door to my best friends. And so we kind of then our core group got coalesced around. And basically, then it got really fun because when you have a group of people that are like, who cares? Like, let's just do it. I mean, for like a year, we're just sending each other red fins of like old churches. Maybe we could turn into apartment buildings and abandoned buildings and lots and, just like crazy ideas. And there was such a fun, like, yes and energy. Because at the point that you're going, I said I'd sacrifice anything. Everything's kind of an option. And one day, Ben and I were actually driving in a neighborhood again that we had actually, we all said, and this won't mean anything to you if you're not from Portland, but we were all like, but please can it not be east of 82nd? That's what we thought is like when like cool Portland ended, east of 82nd. And what do you know? One day Ben and I are driving just literally to get somewhere else. And we're in a neighborhood that we said we would never live in because it wasn't cool. But we saw a house that had a notice in it that it was slated for demolition. And it was like, it looked terrible. It looked like an abandoned like drug house. And so I hopped out of the car and I looked at the notice and it said it had been bought by a developer. And so I did some research, got a hold of the developer and was like, hey, it sounds like you bought this house in this neighborhood. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, here's an idea. Because it was a pretty big lot. It was still a single family lot, but bigger than the other lots in this neighborhood. I was like, how do you feel about a 3-for deal? Like, what if instead of just building one big house here, you built 3, we split up the lots and built 3 homes. Good news for you is you would build and sell 3 homes in one fell swoop. Mm-hmm. And so there were 3 families at that point that were ready to be like, we're going to, again, this is where the flag in the sand thing comes. And what we thought is like, it's not as much as we would hope. It's not as many houses, but it's a nucleus. Like it's enough of a majority that we can plant the flag here. And then the hope will be to kind of start acquiring property around that like core nucleus, which is exactly what happened. When the house to the right came up, we got it. When the house to the back came up, we got it. When a other house got demolished that was just a block away, and then a duplex got built on that property, we made sure to snatch it up. And that is kind of how the neighborhood came to be.
This is so, I love this. This is so good. I want to know, like, I know everyone else does too. We all want to know, do you guys have rules or boundaries or something in place?
Yep.
Like, what are some of the things where it's like, these are the things other than like, these are our values that we're living by? What are some of the like practical rules in place?
So actually the values do get really practical. So in addition to the principles, underneath each of the principles, we have expectations for how that principle gets manifested. So, and then we have what we call, and we have 3 tiers. Okay. So yes, you asked if there's rules, there are. It's like a document.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an actual Google document. So you have the principle. So like, let's say the principle of sharing. Underneath there, we do have baseline practices. So we have our baseline principles, we have our stretch principles, and then we have our imaginative practices or rules that would be like, someday, wouldn't it be amazing if we had a tool library? And it wasn't just for us, it was for our entire community, and people could come and they could borrow stuff and we could, like log it, and a volunteer could run it. That would be something that we haven't done and that we don't really feel like we have capacity to do, but we're all like, that would be a really cool thing to someday be able to do. But the baseline is like, we've kind of agreed that that's how we're going to show up for each other. Imaginative is a little bit more like, woo, someday, wouldn't that be nice? Okay, so then we have like Tuesday night family dinner, which is this rotating practice where every Tuesday a different family cooks dinner for the entire neighborhood, which sounds hard, and it's not hard. Here's the great hack of community is that cooking a proper dinner for a family of 5 is not that much easier than cooking a proper dinner for 35 people. It takes like maybe 20% more time depending on how much chopping your recipe involves, but you eventually learn to pick recipes that don't involve chopping. And so that would be like, we're all just like, that's kind of a principle that it's like, when it's your turn, you show up. And granted, stuff comes up. If it's like my kid is sick or like I'm out of town, it's not like militant, but like if you're around, there is a sense that you're going to show up for your family or for, the broader community on Tuesday nights. It's such a beautiful rhythm because what do we get out of it? We all get at least once a week where our whole families are connecting and sharing space and sharing a meal together. Also, there is a stated rule that if for whatever reason, you just need time with your family versus like community time, it's completely acceptable to bring your plates, pile them with food, and then walk back home and eat it in your own home. So there's so much freedom to be like, if what would serve you is community, come be a part of the chaos. If what would serve you is actually a dinner that you didn't have to cook and you don't have to clean up for your nuclear family, great. Let us take that completely off of your plate. So once a week, for the most part, except for once every 2 months, there's a night of the week where we're not thinking about dinner. We're not prepping, we're not cooking, we're not cleaning up, and we're hanging out with our friends and just eating great, delicious food that somebody else made. Then there are also relational rules. I would say we have a stated and unstated value around transparency, honesty, and reconciliation and repair. So there is a sense that when, not if, when your feelings get hurt in community, when something happens that feels a little tender or a little prickly, or that makes you feel some degree of separation from the community or from a member of the community, you will acknowledge it. And you will pursue conversation. You will communicate your feelings in a way that is honest and also generous. Like, I think the principles of like that we make generous assumptions for one another was really important in the beginning as you're building that trust. I would honestly say, not to sound like Pollyanna about it, but like 10 years in, I don't make anything but generous assumptions. Like, it's just like, I know these people too well. Like, it's just like, I know that if you miss the mark, it isn't because you were trying to hurt me or because you're a bad person. I know you were doing the best you could. And this thing that you said mixes with this weird, tender insecurity that I happen to have too. And so there is a real sense of you talk about the relationship and you commit to repairing it. And doing a process of reflective listening or generative conversation, you can call it different things. But basically, like when someone comes to you with a hard thing, you don't defend yourself. You don't explain it away. You don't tell them that they're being too sensitive or that they're, whatever. It's like you just listen. You listen to your friend and you hear them out and you own what you can own and you apologize and you talk about a plan for how you're going to move forward. And I think without that, that's actually my third tenet to building community is those specific skills of communication. Without knowing how to have the hard conversations, I don't think that you can live the way that we're living and have it actually be a really fruitful thing for everyone, because there's just too many opportunities. There are too many opportunities for feelings to get hurt, for mixed, expectations. But I will say 10 years in a year, the amount of times I have to have one of those conversations is pretty limited, because I've just gotten to a point where I'm like 95% of the time, I'm like, that's your own weird little thing. That's not on her. I think a lot of us just go internal and go like, oh man, what did that bring up? And then it'll come up really naturally in conversation on like a Wednesday night. But there's just like a lot of ownership around like other people aren't out to get you. They're not out to hurt you. We're all just kind of like messy humans and we're, kind of bumping into each other in that way. But I had a moment, this was probably last summer now. I feel like I've told this story like it's really recent, but I think it was last summer where I was at one of our neighborhood birthday parties, which by the way, major hack of living in community, at least when your kids are pretty young, like 0 to 5, you plan a birthday party literally like 24 hours in advance and get like tacos from a taco truck. And then there is like a guaranteed 25 people in your backyard that make you feel like your friend, your kids have friends and it's like fun and celebratory. And that's it. And it's like, I don't know, somebody will grab a piñata from like the Mexican market down the street, just like the lowest key birthday parties, but they're so fun because all of your best friends are there. And then you like, yes, bake a cake for the kid, but they think the whole party, they're just like, this is amazing. So it was at one of these birthday parties that are very low key, but very fun. And one of my kids was struggling and just being a little turd, frankly. He was being a turd. But he was being a turd in a way that actually is kind of like tender for me and kind of brings up some insecurities that I have about him and about my parenting. Anyway, so he's kind of being a turd. I walk away to go like deal with it and I come back. And I stood next to one of my friends who was just like standing in the backyard, like drinking a margarita. And I hear her say something to one of our other friends about my kid. And it felt really tender. Like it wasn't like she was calling him names or like, it wasn't even that dramatic, but just the way that she said it felt like you're like totally judging my kid right now and kind of judging my parenting. That's the story that I told myself about what was happening. And it would have been so easy for me to be like, just whatever. Either one, like, who does she think she is? Like, her kids clearly aren't perfect, like, blah, blah, blah. Or two, to just like go internal and be like, she thinks I'm a bad mom. She thinks my kid's annoying, whatever it is. But we've like, one of the rules of living in this community is like, we don't do that. Like, we let the other person into the story. And so on the way home from the birthday party, we're like walking down the block. I pulled her aside and I was like, hey, I have to talk to you about something. And she was like, okay, yeah, what's up? And I explained the moment in which she realized that I overheard the thing that I don't think she would have said if I was standing right there. And I will never forget this, Stephanie. So I give my initial, like, here's what happened and here's what I heard.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she goes, I am so sorry. And then this was the most powerful moment. She goes, will you tell me everything about how that made you feel? Like, what stories did that bring up for you? Like, tell me everything about what it felt like in that moment to hear me say that. And I just start bawling. I'm like, it brings up this, and I'm insecure about this, and I'm afraid he's never going to figure out how to do this, and da-da-da-da. And so then it leads to this moment where we're both just like crying, and she's, then speaking truth back to me about those stories and about who my kid is and about who I am as a parent. By the way, taking complete ownership of, she was like, as soon as that came out of my mouth, I was just like, and she just said, she's like, I said it because I kind of felt awkward in the conversation. I didn't know I'm not really that good of friends with this gal. And it's just sometimes easy to like comment on what's happening around when you don't know how to make more meaningful conversation. And that was totally me just being socially awkward and like reaching for like easy conversation. And in that moment though, like my friend's willingness to say, tell me everything about how that made you feel. Like to me, what that signals to me, right, is like you care more about me and my feelings in our relationship than you care about defending yourself, making yourself look good, justifying whatever behavior it was. And it was probably ends up being like a 20-minute conversation. But by the end of that conversation, imagine the amount of like trust and intimacy and connection that it's like our friendship can hold so much. Like that can't derail us. Like that is such a small thing in the bigness of our like, shared life together. And then, she even went further. It's not like she even had to do this, but proximity really enables that. She's like, you know what? Sometime in the next week, I'm going to take him on a date. Would that be okay with you? I want to spend some one-on-one time with him. And, she took him out for ice cream and they just had their own little like shared moment. That is actually something that we did this year in communities. We each got matched up with a kid that wasn't ours. This was outside of this, but we each got matched up with a kid that wasn't ours and took them on a one-on-one date of just kind of like auntie, uncle, kid date. Let's go to the arcade. Let's go to the ice cream shop. And I'm just telling you, like my date was with a 9, almost 10-year-old girl in our neighborhood. Like going on a friend date with a 9-year-old girl who isn't your daughter is so special and it's so fun. This is the same little girl who just like 2 days ago came up. I was just like in my bedroom with my little guy and I just looked up and she was just like standing in the doorway and she just came and plopped on the bed and we were just like chatting about her day. Anyway, I could go on and on about getting to co-parent and I don't even say parent. It's very much so. It's like, no, parenting is definitely still her parents' job. But like one of the things that I think is a travesty about American culture is like we have so underestimated the value of the auntie-uncle relationship and how important just like shared, safe adults in our kids' lives.
Okay, Liz, we literally could talk about this forever. And I know, and you know, that you have to be somewhere right now. And so I'm gonna stop this right here. But we're gonna have to keep this going because this is so important and so good and so helpful. And so like speaking of your principle of like making another friend date, we're gonna have to do it to be continued.
All right, to be continued. I kind of like it. Maybe this is my strategy to build our friendship is we just keep going over and have to schedule more meetings. So I'm just building friendship right now.
Oh no.
I have another. Okay, you have to hear this other thing. Okay. All right. Well,
I have another story. You go. We'll have you back. Liz, seriously, thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Bye, everybody.